So this is one of our green drinks. We host them every month. They're educational spaces where local nonprofits, businesses, individuals can present on green initiatives in our area. So thank you for coming. I'm going to do a quick plug of our next green drinks in September. It will be a homeowner's guide to long-range energy planning. By thinking about our energy use in a similar way to how we set a budget for our money, we can begin to make long-range plans for reducing our fossil fuel use. We'll be joined by Rob Andrag to learn how he has taken these actions to reduce his carbon footprint in his home. So very excited for that. That will be in September, and I'll send that out in the email, the follow-up email to this event. Before we get started, I want to run through the agenda and how our meeting will operate. We are recording right now after some trials and tribulations. So if you don't want yourself recorded, like a video recorded, you'll want to go ahead and turn your video off. You are currently muted. So as we go in the presentation, if you have questions, please just type those in the chat box on Zoom, and we'll ask them in the Q&A section after the presentation. If you're not familiar with Zoom, just scroll your cursor over the window. There'll be a little ... at the bottom, and you can select chat. And let's see, I'll follow up with an email, the recording, contact info. That should all be all set. I'm going to double check my settings now. Okay. And I'm going to go ahead and introduce Stephen Wisbaum. As the founder of the Mow Electric campaign, Stephen has been advocating for the transition to electric lawn care equipment within both public and private sectors since 2016. Besides developing the Mow Electric website, doing in-person and virtual presentations, helping organize equipment demo events, and lobbying elected representatives, Stephen was responsible for the creation of the first residential and commercial e-lawn care equipment rebates/incentives based on the ability of this equipment to reduce fossil fuel use and associated greenhouse gas emissions. These rebates are now offered by all 17 electric utilities in Vermont. So it's a joy to have you with us, Stephen. And I'm going to stop and let you go ahead.
Greetings, everyone, and thanks, Ginevra, for that intro. So real briefly, people might be wondering how this happened, that I'm in this position. I first learned about what was called the greenhouse effect in 1978 as a college student in an environmental studies program, and also had made some connections around fossil fuel use and the wars in the Middle East. And at a pretty young age, decided that it was, I was going to try and reduce my own fossil fuel use. And when I found myself I live in a co-housing community here in Charlotte called the Ten Stones community. And we mow about 6 acres of green space, private lawns, and trails, walking trails on our property. And for a while we were using a diesel mower, and I was using biodiesel that was made from vegetable oil, which was a great thing, except it didn't work out very well, had all kinds of problems. And so we were burning diesel, and I was already driving an electric car, and I thought, I wonder if there's electric commercial lawn mowers, these big riding mowers. And I went online. I got a dog here that wants to play. And I found a company in Ohio, and it turned out it was the first company that was making a commercial electric lawnmower, and their name was Mean Green. And I was very excited about it. It looked like a great mower. and noticed they didn't have a sales rep. It was all direct sales. There was no vendors, equipment vendors that would touch these things because it was so new at the time. And so I ended up becoming their Northeast sales rep, and I thought it was going to be very easy because this is Vermont, and I tend to be a little bit optimistic, overly so actually. And it turned out it was not easy, but which is why I encourage the Green Mountain Power to create the first um, incentives, rebates for electric mowers. Sorry, Bodie, you're gonna have to go. Go, out, 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 out. Go, go on. Go. Sit down. Sorry. My family is gone. And he's bored. Anyway, so I spent about 1,000 hours a year for 4 years marketing these mowers, doing demos, lobbying legislators, going and getting all the other utilities to create the incentives, just doing a lot of different work. And I realized that people could see me more as a salesperson as opposed to an advocate. And I was really an advocate first, and it just so happened I was also selling the mowers. When the company was purchased by DR Power Equipment 2 years ago, they didn't need an independent sales rep anymore. And I was gladly, I welcomed the opportunity to just become an advocate. And I formally created the Mow Electric campaign, and have been doing presentations and demos and demo events, and still working with the utilities. Right now I'm working with the utilities. Unfortunately, although they have incentives for residential walk behind mowers and lawn care tools, battery electric lawn care tools and walk behind mowers, and incentives, very significant incentives for commercial riding mowers. For some reason, well, there's no incentives for riding mowers, residential riding mowers. And I suspect there's probably tens of, thousands, if not tens of thousands of riding mowers being used in the state by homeowners. And so I've spent about the last 20, 30 hours communicating with the utilities and having conversations, and they have a meeting coming up in a couple of weeks that this issue is going to be discussed. So I'm still doing a lot of advocacy work, and hopefully they will create incentive. Actually, I take that back. Green Mountain Power does have an incentive for, they're called long tractors, but it's only $100. And it just makes no sense that it's only $100. And I won't go into the details why it should be more, but the main thing is the greenhouse gas emission reductions are much more significant than that. For example, their lawnmower incentive is $75. So walk behind mower, and these mowers are much bigger and they're offsetting much more fossil fuel use. So in any case, that's the kind of stuff I'm doing. So I'll just launch right into this presentation. Why is it not doing that? Okay.
This is going to be one of those technical difficulty days.
Yeah, so that's.
You could reshare your screen if you want. You can stop the share and reshare and see if that helps.
I don't know why it's not letting me move. It did before.
And you've selected. Can you scroll down and hit the next arrow with your cursor? I can see an arrow at the bottom left.
Oh yeah, look at that.
Curious if that would work.
There we go. Good job. Okay, so basically Mo Electric campaigns, grassroots initiative to reduce greenhouse gas emissions, more livable communities through the use of electric lawn care equipment. And why? Because it's pretty obvious that burning billions of gallons of gas and diesel for lawn care in the US is irrational and unnecessary now that practical and cost-effective electric alternatives are readily available. So, not to get in the weeds here, but these are some numbers that came from a report by the US Department of Transportation back in 2015. It's off-highway and public use gasoline consumption. This isn't even diesel. Well, actually, I found some diesel as well, but we are talking billions of gallons of gasoline and diesel, and 54 billion pounds of CO2. And then in Vermont, we're looking at over 5 million gallons of gas and 108 million pounds of CO2. So it's pretty significant. It's less than what's being consumed for transportation, cars, buses, trucks, and less than the thermal use, keeping our houses warm, but still significant. So here's some numbers. Fuel consumption and CO2 emissions. This is per commercial mower. And I used that word before, and I'm going to define it now. These are the mowers that you see that contractors use, municipalities. They're the big mowers that are the riding mowers, often referred to as zero-turn mowers because of the way they operate. They don't have steering wheels, so that's why they're called zero-turn. And those mowers typically use anywhere from 3/4 to a gallon, 1.5 gallons of gas or diesel per hour. And a lot of people don't know this, but the CO2, a gallon of gas or diesel generates approximately 20 pounds of CO2. So 1 gallon an hour is 20 pounds of CO2 per hour. And these mowers can be used for anywhere from, a couple hundred hours a year to 1,000 hours a year. So I just, so it's 690 hours a year. That's 690 gallons of fuel, which is about 7 tons of CO2. That's that's for every commercial lawnmower that you see operating, is generating about 7 tons of CO2 per year in Vermont. Versus an electric commercial mower, again, these are the big mowers, 52 to 60, 72-inch mowing decks, capable of mowing for a full day, 6, 7, 8 hours a day. That's using about 2.8 kilowatt hours per hour of mowing. And so, again, not to get into weeds here, but you're looking at, for the same amount of hours of operation, you're looking at 1/4 of a ton of CO2 versus 7 tons. So it's a tremendous savings to use an electric mower. This is just another way to look at this per acre. And these are just guesstimates, but anywhere from 7 to 14 gallons of gas or diesel per season per acre of mowed area. And so you're looking at up to 280 pounds of CO2 per acre versus 8 pounds. Pretty significant. And then you have the fact that electric mowers have zero tailpipe emissions, which is actually even more significant than the zero tailpipe emissions with an automobile, because there's little to no emission controls on these lawnmowers. So lawnmowers are an incredibly significant source of smog forming and health impacting tailpipe emissions. Um, and you have zero tailpipe emissions on an electric mower, obviously. And then you have the noise factor, which in a lot of places is driving, a lot of communities are passing ordinances because people are just so tired of listening to gasoline mowers and lawn care equipment. Then you have the economic benefits. So this all kind of ties into what's called the life cycle costs. And this is important when you're talking to landscapers or municipalities, because these mowers, electric mowers do cost more initially, even with the incentives. So it's really important to look at life cycle costs. It's a little harder sell because people aren't used to doing that. They just, buy a lawnmower and put the gas in, and they just figure, well, this is the cost of doing business. But on the Mow Electric website, there is a life cycle cost. It's a spreadsheet, interactive spreadsheet, and this graph that you see on this table, on this slide, is from that comparison chart. So lower operating costs, you're looking at, oh boy, sorry. Electricity is a fraction of the cost of gas or diesel. You're looking at about 50 cents an hour versus the cost of gas now is, $3.50, $4.50, $5 a gallon. And if you're talking a gallon an hour, so right there, you're saving anywhere from $3.50 to $4.50 an hour. So, and then electric, if any of you were driving electric cars, you know that you don't have any maintenance costs anymore, except for the blade sharpening and replacement, which is going to be the same. So, whereas with a gas mower, you're looking at regular oil changes, you've got hydraulic oil and pumps, and it's just gas mowers and diesel mowers are just very expensive to maintain. And then also, so it's both, and then the repair costs are going to be less because there's fewer moving parts. So again, just to summarize, you got lower life cycle costs. It's a higher purchase price, but lower operating costs, and also slower depreciation. These are going to last for a lot longer. Most contractors have to replace their gas mowers every 3 or 4 years, whereas these electric mowers will just easily go for 10, 15 plus years. One thing that's really changed in the past few years is the incredible, the literal kind of like explosion of companies that are offering these products. So this is just a slide that shows example of 4 companies, but on the right you see there's, I don't know, 10 companies, but actually on our website, it says Explore Equipment. I think there's over 20 companies offering electric residential walk-behind mowers now. And my projection is within 5 years, you won't even be able to find a gas-powered mower for homeowners, because they just make so much sense. They're not that much more expensive than a gas mower. In some cases, they're probably even less. And they're just so easy to maintain and to use. Many of these actually, you can fold them up and just during the winter, set them up on their side or upright, and totally get them out of the way. And you can't do that with a gas mower because then you have the gasoline spilling everywhere. So these are the electric residential riding mowers that I was referring to. There are now 6 companies that are making these. And they're many, if not all of them, are really great machines. You can see the difference. The Cub Cadet in the middle has a steering wheel, whereas the other ones have these arms. That's what's referred to as zero turn. They're steered by a different mechanism. They power, one lever puts power to the right hand wheel, and the left lever gives power to the left, and that's how you, if you move both forward, you go straight, but then if you move one back and one forward, then you can turn in a circle. That's how you steer. And you can see these are in a range of 4, actually even more. I think some of them are like even $10,000, $11,000. But the Ego in particular is now sold at Lowe's, and I know people who have them and are very happy with them. The Hustler just came out. I don't know anybody that's using it yet, but you know, these are pretty simple machines. There's basically the controls that goes through the battery and a controller right to electric motors for each of the blades and the wheel motors, the wheels. So very simple, very few moving parts, and very easy to fix if something does happen. Then, of course, you have robotic lawn mowers, and there's a number of companies making these. These are not inexpensive, but they work great. And basically, the way they work is that they mow automatically every few days. So because they're taking off they're only cutting you know, like an inch or even less than an inch. So they operate pretty much on their own. They have Bluetooth and all kinds of things, but I know people that are using them and are very happy with them. And then, of course, you have a tremendous variety of handheld lawn care tools, string trimmers, leaf blowers, hedge pole trimmers, chainsaws, you name it. This is where things are going also. Once people use them, they are so glad and they wish they had switched a long time ago. And then there's the commercial lawn mowers. These are the mowers that will be run. They're heavier duty than the residential mowers. They're wider mowing decks, and they're designed. They have enough battery power to operate for minimum 6 hours, 7, 8 hours, which is a concern for especially contractors, less of a concern for municipalities and institutions where, you know, colleges, universities, they're not going to work more than an 8-hour day anyway, and rarely would. So the mower only needs to run for maybe 7 hours. Whereas contractors sometimes work 9, 10-hour days. And so so some of these mowers, the runtime isn't going to be enough. Although the Gravely mower, they have a swappable battery system. So you can buy extra batteries and carry them with you. And then if you run out of juice, you just put in, you know, swap out the batteries. It just increases the cost. I shouldn't say just, it does increase the cost of the mower, but it provides that extra runtime. So who's using commercial electric lawnmowers in Vermont right now? The closest to Woodstock is Green Bee Lawn and Garden in Windsor, or the Electric Lawn in Upper Valley. So then and those aren't even very close. So, but and a number of these companies started out electric, Greener Lawn Care started out electric, Bear Mountain, Green Bee, Electric Lawn, obviously they all started. Some of these others were conventional and still are, and just have electric mowers that they're using. And then other than contractors, Shelburne Farms just started this spring. They bought 2 Gravely mowers. University of Vermont just started recently. They've now have 3 commercial mowers, and they're going to be transitioning their entire lawn care program to electric. Burlington Parks and Rec have a couple. They're in the process of transitioning. My community is 10 Stones Homeowners Community, and then the Vermont Department of Forest, Parks and Recreation. They only have 1 mower. Just want to be clear. They should have a lot more, but that's where, you know, citizen advocacy is going to come in, because I can only do so much, but we need to be pushing the state to be making this transition. And then this is the residential and commercial incentives you're looking at, and these vary depending on the utility. So so each utility sets its own rebate amount. So that's why it's, for example, for the commercial, it's $1,000 to $3,500 depending on the utility. And those QR codes go right to the Mow Electric website with the incentive page. I've created these for point of sale signs, and I've been trying to get stores to put these up, and I don't know why it's been so difficult, but because it's anyway, it's a whole nother story. But you know, hopefully if you walk into a store and they're selling these, you should ask them, why aren't they putting up a sign letting people know that there are incentives available? Because a lot of people don't know these incentives are available. And again, it's just been me pushing this, and I can only do so much. And I'm actually talking to Efficiency Vermont right now. That's another thing that's going to be talked about at this meeting coming up with the utilities. I'm suggesting that the utilities enlist the support of Efficiency Vermont to help publicize and promote these incentives. We'll see if anything happens in that way, but I'm hoping. Here's some suggestions to help grow the electric movement. You know, people can start using lawn care equipment themselves, or hire an e-lawn contractor, or pressure your contractor to seriously start looking at this. You know, talking about the environmental and economic benefits of e-lawn care equipment. Helping organize commercial e-mower demo events like the one in Rochester, Vermont. We've done a few of them. In fact, I think there was just one that happened down the Two Rivers Ottauquechee organization organized a demo event in the spring. And I thought it was in Woodstock, but I'm not sure. Encourage, you know, towns, cities, state government to transition to e-lawn care equipment, and encourage state legislators to take actions that will help expand the use of e-lawn care equipment in the private and public sectors. I've been doing this myself, but I think, well, it's going to have more effect if more people get on board and start advocating. So it's not just me. So thanks, and I'm happy to take questions.
Thanks so much, Stephen. And you are correct. There was a e-lawnmower demo in Woodstock. It was targeted at the town of Woodstock, though, the employees of the Public Works Department. And I think Hartford also came, and another town, Norwich, perhaps. So great. Well, we have lots of comments and questions happening here in the chat. So feel free to keep writing those if they come up. Michael and I will go ahead and read these out. Does that sound good, Michael? Do you want me to start?
Sure, go ahead, Jennifer.
Okay. Um, if indeed cost incentives are good and the battery power is durable, what do you say to lawn care companies who don't want to invest for years until their current machinery wears out? Many are still skeptical based upon past experience with earlier models.
Well, they couldn't be skeptical based on earlier models because there weren't earlier models. Um, this is a relative, there's other reasons to be skeptical, there's no question. And and I wouldn't recommend that they switch out equipment that is still usable. But as I said before, most contractors have to switch out their equipment every 3 or 4 years anyway. Um, but it is a stretch. It's a new technology. It's a lot of money. They need their equipment to run, and there's just there's some just biases against electric because it's new. Look how long it took, or look how long it's taking for more people to adopt, start driving electric cars or even plug-in hybrids, which is makes total sense. You don't even have to worry about running out of range, out of battery power, because it just goes to a gas mower. But still, so many people, even people who are um, predisposed and concerned about climate change, are not driving plug-in electric cars. It's just inertia. It's human nature to be skeptical. Um, and So I guess encouraging them to reach out to companies that have made the switch. Um, and they're listed on my website. And and they need to feel the pressure from their customers. They need to know that their customers, and the customers may need to pony up a little bit more money to help overcome the higher initial cost, because it is a lot more. You're looking at potentially, if a commercial mower costs, let's say, $16,000, and there's a range, different companies, different models, but still, just say $16,000. Um, the lower end commercial mowers, you're looking about 24, 25,000. So you're looking at about, $9,000 more. You take away the incentive, that reduces the price, maybe 25, $3,000. You're still talking another $5,000. That's a lot of money um, to experiment essentially on a new technology. What's ironic about it is that once they switch, they're going to find that, oh my gosh, they don't have to worry about all the things that go wrong with a commercial mower. Um, but that is another concern as well, as a lot of these contractors like to buy their mowers from somewhere local. So then, not if something goes wrong, but when something goes wrong, they know that they don't have to go very far to bring it in for service. Um, and, but as, now that there's three other manufacturers, Toro um, and Gravely, that helps. But there's only one Gravely dealer. He's in Barrie. It's Tucker Machine. And then the Toro dealer I just talked to, they're up in Colchester. And for the first year or two, they will be, even though a lot of vendors sell Toro is sold by many different equipment vendors around the state. Toro is just bringing online just one vendor initially, because there's training that goes on and that sort of thing. I just found that out today. So, so that's another, hurdle. So these people that are going to make the switch are going to have to be motivated by personal values in terms of concern about about climate change and the use of fuel, and or pressured by their customer base to start making the switch. And I will just say one thing, they might be hesitant because they think, well, I can't switch all my equipment, but I think it would be worthwhile to encourage them to think about, hey, you don't have to do this all at once. Just the next mower that you get, have it be electric, and then you can use that mower for those customers that want an electric mower. So start out, you don't have to, completely be all electric. You can offer that as a special service for those customers that are looking for that. So that'll ease the transition as well.
Thank you, Steve. There's another question here which someone responded to, but I'll pose it to you so you can answer, please. Why are there any emissions at all with electric mowers?
Why are there no emissions?
Why are there any emissions with electric mowers?
Oh, well, there is zero tailpipe emissions, but okay, yeah. So the greenhouse, it's not emission. So the greenhouse gas. So that's a great question. And that is because there is greenhouse gas emissions associated with the electricity, right? So the production, the generation and distribution of electricity uses a certain amount of energy. And in the case of Vermont, it also, the sources of electricity, depending on the utility, in Vermont, we're lucky. We have a pretty high percentage of our electricity is coming from completely renewable sources. Now that does include hydro, which some people have concerns about because it's coming from Canada and large tracts of land and indigenous land was flooded. So some people have some valid concerns about that. But in terms of greenhouse gas emissions, and that's true of nuclear as well. But there's no greenhouse, so that's why there's some greenhouse gas emission associated with electricity. Electricity is not greenhouse. It's not a pure, we're not off the hook. There's still some greenhouse gas emissions associated with electricity.
Thank you.
Just a lot less.
Yeah, thank you for answering that. Our next question is, are the electric mowers powerful enough to handle the spring growth? Say if your grass had gotten a bit high, like 5 or 6 inches.
Yes. So, the backyard mowers, I shouldn't say the backyard, the residential mowers, could struggle a little bit if someone let it go really long. I mean, any tool is going to have its operating range. Even a gas mower, there's just more skepticism around electric, but I have yet to meet someone who has an electric mower, and I have one too. I have both a zero turn and for our community, we have a zero turn, and I have videos of mowing grass that was vegetation that was 1.5 feet tall. These are electric motors are very powerful. The one concern with commercial mowers is the discharge, how the lift and discharge, which is related to the size of the blade and design of the blade. And I ran into this initially, and that was one of the challenges, was the factory Mean Green used a smaller, narrower blade so that they could increase the runtime, right? Because the wider the blade, the more power it takes to spin it, the more power you're taking from the battery, the quicker you're going to run out of battery juice. So they had to make, a decision, and that was an issue for some people noticed that. And so you could, in certain conditions, run into a problem. But that was the older models. They've now using bigger blade motors and And that's just not been an issue. For a residential mower, yeah, you could get in a situation where you're exceeding the capacity of that mower, but it's very rare. And you can put it up higher and just go slower. But these mowers do work, and they even in wet, tall grass.
Thank you, Steve. Susan just has a comment here, which is, she says, I would not go with a self-propelled mower. It's too heavy. And if the battery gets used up, it would be hard to push. But I do have 2 batteries, so I can go longer.
That's interesting. Yeah. So self-propelled, it is gonna, I have a walk behind mower, residential mower, and I did not go with the self-propelled. I just find that I just thought it was one more thing to go wrong. And the exercise is good, you know. But that is an option, and could be an issue. But then again, the reviews on these products have been pretty good, very good.
Yeah. The next actual question is, what will happen to all of the internal combustion mowers? Short of selling one's John Deere mower, will the mower manufacturers accept trade-ins?
Oh, it's a good question. You know, that's going to be an issue with any product. You know, we live in this, you know, there's going to be, you know, whether it's cars or lawnmowers or mattresses or refrigerators, you know, a lot of these can be recycled. The metal, these engines and the decks can go to scrap yards, and they melt them down and you know, take out the plastic and reuse reprocess the metal. The thing is that gas-powered mowers have a pretty short lifespan anyway. Now, I run into people who have had residential riding mowers for many years. And it depends how well it's maintained. It depends on what the quality was initially. It's just a fact of life that once a piece of equipment has gone through its useful life, it's going to need to be hopefully recycled. And I wouldn't necessarily advocate getting rid of a good gas mower to replace it with a electric mower, because the argument could be made that you know, there's greenhouse gas emissions associated with you know, the manufacture of a electric mower. And so, but yeah, but it really makes sense when the useful life of that you've reached the useful life of that gas-powered mower. And you know, in the case of a car, you know, those often can be sold and as used. It's going to be a lot harder to probably a little harder to sell a gas-powered mower. And as far as a dealer taking it in on trade, they might absolutely do that, but it depends on what kind of condition it's in and what the market is for a that particular model, the used mower. They're not going to do it if they're going to lose money on it. That's for sure.
Thank you. I'm got the next question here, which you mentioned a little bit in your presentation, but how do emissions from mowers compare to auto emissions?
There's a slide that I went through. You know, I've heard something like, you know, well, first of all, if you do a Google search for just that, a study will come up that's from California, but it doesn't define what type of mower it is. but I've heard some pretty astounding numbers, like it's equivalent of like 30 cars. I mean, there's no emission control on these engines, and they're notoriously, these two-cycle engines are notoriously dirty to begin with, and there's no emission control. So they're much, much more dirtier than automobiles, which have a lot of emission control. Um, Especially if the catalytic converter hasn't been taken out, stolen, which is happening a lot. Um, but it's funny, you know, I've been driving electric cars now myself, and well, leave it on mowers. I used to be responsible for our diesel mower here at Ten Stones, and we were spending about $1,000 a year on repair and maintenance and fuel. And now we're spending maybe $25 on electricity. Um, uh, and there's zero emissions. You know, it's just, yeah, it's the zero tailpipe emissions, as opposed to, in fact, if you go to the, oh, it should be on the website, but I don't know if it is. I did a YouTube, it's a 30-second video. You can do a type in, go to YouTube and type in comparison of diesel and electric mean green mower, and it's mostly for sound. But when I start up the engine for the diesel mower, you see this cloud of smoke come out, and that wasn't even intentional, and it's not part of the video. It wasn't what I was focusing on. It's basically a comparison of the sound, and I use a sound meter. It's actually a great little video. But you can, yeah, so huge difference in terms of emissions from a gas powered mower and a electric mower.
Thank you, Steve. There's another really important, I think, observation here, which comes from one of our regional providers, the Electric Lawn. Shrinking your lawn really helps to cut mowing emissions and should be paired with electric powered maintenance. The concept of the classic, I'm saying classic, American front lawn represents a massive amount of our land base. Do you have any thoughts about that, Steve?
I do. I have, I think there's definitely some, it's valid. It's a valid observation. We have a yard, this comes up often, and what I'm a little concerned about it, because I know how much the huge amount of time that we spend maintaining our non-lawn. So we have a lot of gardens around our property, and we spend so much time and money maintaining that, you know, buying the plants, maintaining the plants, pruning the plants, replacing the plants, you know, thinning the plants. It's a huge commitment. Weeding, mulching. You know, I love our garden, but often my wife and I comment like, yeah, this is pretty, this is a huge time and money. Fortunately, I've spent probably tens of thousands of dollars on our buying plants for our lawn. There was nothing on this property. It was wood, so we had to cut it all down because it was all ash trees, and so every single plant we put in the ground, and there are hundreds of plants. And I know I've spent tens of thousands of dollars on these plants. Fortunately, I have a compost business, so you know I was able to call it, you know, expense for my compost business, because I was, you know, my home is my office, and so, but it's, you know, it's just, I get that there's a lot of environmental impacts from lawns, but they can be reduced by, you know, raising the blade, not using fertilizers, and mulching, leaving the grass in place, and using electric lawn care tools, and or I should say, but expecting, you know, the average person to invest that time and money into turning their lawn into gardens is just not realistic. And it's not going to happen. And for good reason, because a lot of people don't want to spend that time. So this is the next best thing. If you're going to have a lawn, stop using gas.
Thank you. I'll just share a quick perspective here. When we moved into our house 10 years ago, we picked some areas that we didn't want to mow. So we planted them all to different wildflower mixes. And now I either mow or weed whack them maybe 3 times a year. And they're sort of a more of a wildflower type area rather than a formal garden. So if you can live with that type of a space instead of a lawn or a formal garden, it certainly cuts down on the work, and it's just another option to think about.
Yeah, definitely. I've planted a big wildflower garden out. We have a piece of land that was also forest with both basically elm and ash that are all dying. So we pulled it all, cut it all down, and I put wildflowers out there. And I've spent a lot of time out there this summer and last year going through and pulling out the buckthorn and the honeysuckle and the burdock. And it's beautiful, but it's taken a huge amount of time and money to maintain it. And and that's the thing, people say, oh, just don't mow. But I've spent 15 years and hundreds of hours managing 40 acres of open meadow. And we have, I don't know if you have it down there, but poison parsnip is a major issue. And I've literally spent probably thousands of hours pulling it on our property. Fortunately, I have help now in our community. So then you got buckthorn. So you have all these invasives that you have to deal with. And then also this idea of not mowing much. If you let it get up too high, now you can't mow it with a mower. And now you got to have someone come in with a brush hog, a tractor pulled brush hog, or, some other pretty intensive mowing machine. So it's, there's nuance to these ideas of reducing lawn.
Well, and it's a good point to really look at your own landscape, isn't it? And see what's there. And especially with invasives, it might be totally reasonable to let parts go or not, depending on your case. We only have technically 5 minutes left. So I'm going to go ahead and ask the next question. Thank you for your information and your work in this area. Can you comment on how the use of electric push mowers makes lawn care more doable for a broader range of people? Is it true that individuals who are older, of slight stature, or partially disabled would have an easier time pushing an electric mower than a traditional one? Also, are electric mowers a healthier choice for individuals with respiratory problems like asthma, or such as asthma?
One thing I've heard, this is a great comment. One thing I've heard is people say, I just can't start my gas mower. Just that pulling of of the pull cord on a gas mower is really hard for people. This is a push button. You push a button and pull, just pull the handle, and now you're going. So and it's also, now you're not having to transport gasoline. And if you have a self-propelled mower, also makes it even easier. So yes, I think that is a really good point. It is easier to use for those reasons. Also, now you're not breathing those, really harmful emissions from your gas mower that is coming out right as you're walking. Just awful. Yeah. So very good point.
Thank you, Steve.
And I don't know if you want to comment on the part of making lawn care more doable. Did I miss?
Oh, well, it makes it is easier. Absolutely. Yeah. An electric mower is easier to use. So it's more doable. I would encourage people who don't have one now to seek out people that do have them. Just put a notice on Front Porch Forum, and I tried to put something together on the website, an ambassador program, and to let people who are in a particular area, give those people an opportunity to, um, or have those people be accessible to their neighbors, to talk to them about the mower. But that can just be done on an informal basis, just by putting the word out to your friends and neighbors, or on Front Porch Forum. Hey, who's got an electric mower? Can I talk to you about it, and try it and see how it's working? And what you will find is the people that have them love them and wish they had done it a long time ago.
Thank you. So there's some really good comments. There's kind of a really good conversation going on in the chat. So everyone will be able to look at that in the recording. The next real actual question is, are there electric mulching mowers?
Yes, I think all of the mowers have, most of them will have a mulching capability. I know I have a steel mower, and it has a little plastic piece that you can put on that prevents it from being discharged. Personally, I don't get the mulching thing. I find that if unless the grass is really tall, I don't need it to mulch. I just cut it and leave it, and it gets entered. So, maybe, I guess there must be something to it because they're doing it, but I've never found that I needed um, a mulching capability. And but though they are available, so if you go to whatever company you're looking at, and go to there and look at the models, and you can look at the specifications and see if it has a mulch setting. I think most of them do.
Thank you, Steve. Are you okay with like one or two more questions? I know we're at 6.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. This one's been talked about a bit in the chat. The chat's really vibrant. But what is the cheapest riding mower?
I think that would be the Ryobi, but I think the word cheap has some connotations which are accurate. I think oftentimes you get what you pay for, and saving a little bit of money. I personally found the Ryobi to be, there's a lot of plastic parts to it. I found it to be a little toy-like, at least the first version that came out. Maybe the newer versions are a little more sturdy. But if someone is concerned about price, which is it's totally reasonable. We're entering a very good time to buy mowers. Buying a mower at the end of the season, they're going to be on sale. And so I'd say it'd be better off to buy a better mower, which would be like the Ego or the Hustler. And there's only one Hustler in the state. It's available at Spear Street Mowers in Charlotte, which is a ways to go, but he's the only distributor right now, and he's got one sitting there. And I am trying to get these incentives beyond $100. So hopefully that's going to happen pretty soon. I don't know if it'll happen this year. I'll know more in a couple weeks. But the mid-priced, yeah. So you're looking at, I think around, for the Ego, I think you're looking around $5,500. They're not, so it's not inexpensive. But what you'll find with lawnmowers is there's just such a huge range of price range, and this is true of gas mowers. You can go to look at Home Depot or Tractor Supply and see, like a John Deere or some, riding mower that they're selling for a couple $1,000, gas mower, but it's going to fall apart. It's going to have problems. So you can't really compare. It's difficult to compare prices. But I personally, I would say if you're buying a mower and spending that kind of money, you might as well spend a little extra and get something that's well built and sturdy.
Well, thank you, Steve. There's a lot, most of the rest of the comments are just saying thanks for the great program and for sharing all this information and for all the good work that you do in promoting electric lawn care.
You're welcome.
Yeah, thank you so much. And I am happy to, yeah, I'm just scrolling through these too. Yeah, thanking you. And I am happy to send out a follow-up email to everyone registered with the recording of this and also the link to your website, Steve, to Mo
Yes,
and
please. Yeah.
to any, I'm happy to link to any other resources that you think would be helpful to send people. So I'll send that out if anyone's worried about following up and how to contact you.
Okay.
Okay. Well, everyone have a good night. Thanks so much for coming.
Thank you, everybody. Thanks
Thank
for your
you.
interest. Mo Electric.